Imagine you are being farmed, not for your flesh and your meat, but for your very being. The prison planet theory is kind of an umbrella term that kind of encompasses this idea that Earth and the reality that we experience is not a naturally occurring reality, and that it's been constructed by some form of non-human intelligence or some kind of beings that harvest our consciousness and use illusion and deception to kind of force us into this cycle of rebirth and reincarnation so that they can harvest our energy or our essence, our consciousness, all that. So I've kind of divided this video into 3 sections, each one discussing another like supportive idea of prison planet theory or different lens to look at it through, because it's such a broad topic. I'm not a genius, so I'm not claiming that I'm big brain on anything. But I will say that if you do struggle with some kind of like derealization, not being able to tell what's real type issues, this video might not be the best for you, just because we do talk a lot about how maybe reality isn't real and, you know, how our brains are being manipulated. So if you struggle with that, maybe click away. But before you leave, like this video. If you could just do that before you don't watch it, that'd be super helpful. Anyway, section 1, Gnosticism. For those who don't know, Gnosticism is a collection of religious and philosophical ideas that date back to the mid-2nd century. It emerged around the same time as certain Christian subgroups. It's kind of like an offshoot of Christianity. It involves scriptures and books that aren't considered to be in the quote-unquote canonization of the Bible, just because it teaches things that are seemingly contradictive to the like main philosophy of modern day Christianity. So Gnosticism pushes more for a personal spiritual pursuit and finding peace within, rather than looking outward at more of a orthodox traditional style of like worship in church, and focuses more on inner spiritual development. The rabbit hole for Gnosticism is crazy deep, so just let me know if you want a video on that, because it is really interesting, and we only touch on like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to some of the philosophies and stories within Gnosticism. So it could be a really interesting video. In some ancient Gnostic beliefs, the world isn't seen as a perfect creation, but instead is described as a flawed reality made by a lesser being called the Demiurge. According to this view, the human body is more of a cage for a divine spark that all humans possess, and we are stuck and trapped here by this Demiurge. This Demiurge is considered to be a false creator god of the material reality, and is responsible for keeping us stuck again in this cage of the material body, perpetuating this cycle of pain and suffering. During the creation of the material world, the Demiurge is responsible for creating what are called archons, these 7 quote-unquote assistants to maintaining the material world. Because they were born out of quote mistake, they lack a true divine spark. They are hollow, which is why they need to feed on us, because they are lacking that divine essence that real beings have, from my understanding. Archons are often described as having bodies of humans with both genders and having faces of animals such as lions, snakes, dragons, and so forth. Now, I'm not trying to do anything with this idea, I guess, but it does kind of remind me a little bit of how ancient Egyptian pharaohs and like god kings were described, you know, like with human bodies but with animal heads. And I don't know if there's like an actual connection there or a rabbit hole or anything, so if somebody has made that connection, leave it in the comments. But it's just it was a weird like connect the dots when I was doing my research. I don't know if it's far-fetched or not, but I thought it was kind of neat. In modern culture or modern conspiracy circles, archons could also be described as, you know, the Greys or any kind of UFO alien being, or what is known as shadow people. From what I understood, it seemed like any kind of weird entity encounter could be attributed to the Archons. And I think that's just because we don't understand 100% what is going on at any point ever. I don't. And maybe that's because I'm losing it, but I don't give a fuck. There's a concept that the Archons can use some kind of psychic ability to project themselves into our mind so that we perceive them in such a way that they control, which is then used to manipulate us. And they kind of feed off of the energy that our minds create. And it kind of reminded me of like ghosts. Like, I don't know if any of you have watched like Ghost Adventures or anything like that, but you know how ghosts use like EMF. They have EMF frequency readers or whatever. EMF reader. Look at that. We want to see if we can get anything. Are there any spoopies? Maybe like the ghost of like, I don't know, JFK. Anyway, you know how ghosts, they kind of feed off of electromagnetic frequencies, and they take that energy to do things. That's why people say like, you can use the battery of my camera or my phone or whatever. It kind of reminds me of that too, in a sense. So again, with like the Egyptian god thing, I don't know if there's some kind of connection to be made there, but it was an interesting parallel that I made in my brain, because I'm a genius. I'm clearly peak intelligence. Who needs AI when you have my brain? So Archons were designed to fit 3 specific roles and have 3 specific functions when it came to monitoring the farm, if you will. Their first role is called emotional extraction. They are to manipulate human society to produce what is called loosh, or intense emotional energy. There'll be more about loosh later in the video. I'm going to define it, but just lock in for a second. They love war, religious extremism, and social media, for a more modern take on the concept, because it creates a quote-unquote vibrational frequency that they can consume. Basically, they love chaos, so they want to feed on it, because that is kind of what they're made of. They want to perpetuate the suffering and the chaos so that we, through our material vessels, produce a form of loosh that then they can siphon off of us. So it's not necessarily that we are the farm. It's like we're not like the livestock. It's what we produce for them. I guess it's kind of like they're milking our ethereal udders so they can get the juices. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. You know, I was researching all this and it seemed pretty woo-woo, but like now that I'm like saying it out loud, I feel like I have totally lost all grip with reality. And I have like what am I even talking about? The Archon's second role is memory management. So this is the idea that when we die, they are to wipe our memory of our past lives. Everyone is familiar with the go towards the light or don't go towards the light, like the light at the end of the tunnel when you die. The idea is that there is some form of technology or spiritual fuckery, if you will, that then kind of wipes our memory about who we really are. It's just a part of what keeps us trapped here. Because another part of this maintenance memory thing is that when you die, it is said that you are seeing like your loved ones, your kids, pets, religious figures, heaven, hell, all that, right? That these are projections that they use to convince you that you have karmic debt, or you need to go back to learn a lesson or whatnot, so that you stay in the material world and are basically choosing for yourself to go back and reincarnate in the farm. The third and last function of these Archons is to maintain the quote-unquote matrix that we live in. And what this means is that they are to maintain the infrastructure and the rules of the illusion, to convince us that what we are witnessing materially is the only thing that exists, and there's nothing spiritual or ethereal about how we are or who we really are. Think of like the laws of physics as the cage, I guess, that they are to maintain this illusion of order within the disorder to keep us disillusioned from who we really are. It sounds like so backwards and I made the connection as well that they must love modern science. And I'm not trying to bash science or whatever, because like big brain, super cool, love that. But modern science, at least in today's age, is all based in materialism, in the sense of that everything that can be or will be can be perceived with our minds and with our own eyes. We just have to discover it. And this is a whole other topic, but I do feel like if this is real, that obviously feeds directly into it. But also I do feel like on a personal level, we are missing like a whole plethora of like spiritual science and spiritual development because of that overall arching view. But we can talk religion and philosophy in a different episode if you really want to. Now, a key feature and function or dysfunction of the archons is that they can't produce or make anything quote-unquote real. So like if you view the material world that we live in, like our bodies in this video, everything as fake or an illusion, they can manipulate and distort, but they can't create what is real. And there's a distinction, because what is real is considered to be like the divine spark that we are, like the soul, the ethereal realm, whatever you want to call it. They can't make that, so they kind of envy us because we're part of that, so they trap us out of envy in an attempt to harvest our essence. It's kind of like Dr. Sleep. I don't know if, let me know if you've seen that movie, but in them, I'm going to spoil it. Well, I don't remember how it ends, but it's supposed to be this the sequel to The Shining, and it kind of follows the little boy, I don't remember his name, and he kind of goes back to the hotel, I think, and it doesn't really touch on The Shining as much as I kind of wanted it to, but there's this group that like through fear can suck out like kids' essences because of the fear, and I think they can do it to adults too, but they choose kids because it's easier, I guess. I'm not trying to get like Epstein level stuff in here, but you know what I mean. It's kind of like that they use chaos to then siphon. It's like the Dementors in Harry Potter. That would have been a much better way to describe what I'm talking about. I'm losing it. These archons, they don't possess what is called logos or divine reason. They rely on cold logic and deception to function and do things. This is why the material world often can feel unnatural or even off, is because it's not our natural state, and it's created by these beings that don't truly understand reality. They don't understand the actual nature of things. They try to imitate it via the material world and are failing at it. You can compare them to kind of like robots in a way. They don't have a soul, but they function as an imitation of real existence, and they've learned to cage our natural state. And this, for some, ties directly into the second section of this video, is that we're living in a simulation. This is the start of simulations theory. So simulation theory is like exactly what it sounds like. Everything is code, nothing is real. We're all just ones and zeros. Nothing matters. We're all just a computer system in a vat or something. It's pretty easy, in my opinion, to see how this relates to what we were just discussing with Gnosticism, because you could view the archons as more of like admins or security software within the simulation, that they are here to fix glitches or to adjust settings depending on how the simulation is running. And they do this to keep the NPCs or us focused on the game or the simulation rather than the overarching fact that we're stuck in a computer game. Now, in the sense of like a farm or some kind of plant, I guess, our emotions wouldn't necessarily be like some energetic force that something is trying to harvest, but more of a data trying to be studied. So consider them kind of like a stress testing simulation. The infamous they are running simulations on sentient beings or simulated sentient beings to see how they would respond to stress, war, danger, all of that, to potentially help their society, better understand those things. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom, who is often credited to be the father of simulation theory, presented the trilemma. First, either such simulations are not created because of technological limitations or self-destruction, or advanced civilizations choose not to create them. And finally, if advanced civilizations do create them, the number of simulations would far exceed base reality, and we should therefore most certainly live in one. I don't want to be an ass when I say this, but it doesn't seem super profound to me, because it's like saying we're in a simulation or we're not. It's either we're real or we're not real. That's just how it is. However, the last point, in my opinion, does kind of tickle my brain. I find it interesting because if there was a base reality, there would only be one base reality. And if we could simulate something, like it's like there are so many video games. We can make a ton of video games, but we can't make one base reality, because the base reality is the starting point for all the video games. Does that make, you know what I'm saying? Now, I understand there's like multiverse theory, and it's like, well, what if there's a part of the universe within the universe that is outside of the simulation, and it has multiple base realities? No. But like, it hurts my brain, and for the sake of argument, we're not going to discuss it, and it's because it gets so convoluted and so derails that we're just focused on this reality. It does kind of make sense, though, that, if this is base reality, and we build a simulation that is exactly or as close as we can get to our reality, we would make hundreds, if not thousands, to simulate all sorts of things: war, love, destruction, disease, happiness. Like, if you could test things on a sentient being without it really being a sentient being, you could test whatever you wanted. Think about it like this. Within the simulation theory, it's the speed of light could be looked at as the rendering speed of the GPU, or you could see the laws of physics as the software. When it comes to graphics and stuff, we have AI that, I can't even tell what's real on the internet anymore. It's like it's this close to being indistinguishable from reality. So it's like we get to a point where we're inserting chips into people's brains or whatever. Sometimes ChatGPT freaks me out with how real it sounds, So I don't think it's too far-fetched of an idea that we could get to that point, or that we already have and this is not real. But like, what do we do about that? We're going to kind of talk about it a little bit more, but I don't know. Simulation theory is kind of like prison planet theory, just instead of some kind of spiritual aspect, it's a mechanical code version of it. Yeah, same thing, different words. Simulation theory kind of reminds me of like Discord and Reddit mods, like, you have discovered the speed of light. Well, I must stress test this entire population with giving them AIDS. In order to be part of my server, you have to pay with your testing. I tip my hat to the kawaiis. Like that. Our final section, I've just titled Salvador Frexido. I don't know if I said that correctly, and I do apologize. I am not bilingual, and he is Spanish, I think. Our boy Salvador Frexido is a pretty big name in this niche. He was a Jesuit priest for 30 years, and then he was expelled from the order because of what he started to notice. He began to question the church, and he believed that there were these situations and these problems, these questions that the church wasn't taking seriously or weren't even addressing at all. He became pretty radical in his beliefs, and then therefore the church expelled him from the order. Also, if you can hear that, I don't know if you can hear it on the camera on the mic, but my cat, Mr. Bingus, is playing. Mr. Bingus! Mr. Bingus! Do you like playing while I'm making videos, Mr. Bingus? Huh? Do you have anything you want to say? Looking like a little fucking cutie. Mr. Bingus! After being expelled, he wrote the book La Grana Humana, or The Human Farm. I apologize again if I didn't pronounce that correctly. I am using Duolingo to try to learn Spanish, so I can feel that I haven't done my streak today. He stresses me out. This was published in 1988, and it argues that humans are literally livestock. So let's kind of break down this whole philosophy according to our boy here. His background in the church and as a priest kind of led him to a darker conclusion about the universe and the world we live in. And he started to believe that the God that we were worshiping is not the true creator God of all things. This does not specifically mean just Christianity. He believes this about every major religion that believes in a God. He believes that they are quote-unquote gods, but considers them to be a lowercase g type God rather than the big OG. You know what I mean? In his philosophy, these gods, these lowercase g gods, are considered to be interdimensional extraterrestrials that are here to maintain and kind of shepherd the herd, which is us. He believes that the religions of the world are more like rules and regulations for us to fall in line with what these extraterrestrial interdimensional gods want us to do, so that we, again, stay trapped in the material without realizing that we are being lied to. It kind of reminds me of that clip, I'll play a little bit of it, of Bob Lazar saying that he found this document talking about how aliens view us as containers. For those who don't know, Bob Lazar is a kind of like a whistleblower. He deserves his own episode, and it was a little difficult to find information about what he means by this. He claims to have worked at Area 51, and then when he started to talk about it, he started getting like harassed by the government and harassed by all these different people, and his life was in jeopardy, and Bingus is making so much noise. Basically, here's the clip.
Okay, what does it say? That we're containers. That's how supposedly the aliens look at us. That we are nothing but containers. Containers of? Containers. Maybe containers of souls. You can come up with whatever theory you want, but we're containers. And that's how we're mentioned in the document. That religion was specifically created so we have some rules and regulations for the sole purpose of not damaging the containers.
He is considered to be like a big deal, and it kind of ties into what we're talking about. You know, I don't know. I just thought about it. All right, don't look at me. According to Salvador, the major religions of the world again are more of a maintenance system to keep us grouped and controlled, kind of giving us something to chase after. I guess in a spiritual rat race. I kind of look at it in the sense of like capitalism. You know, if somebody is always pursuing enlightenment, you know, being one with God, being in heaven, all that, if you're always trying to pursue something, you'll never be content with what you have. You'll always be distracted about what you don't have and what you're trying to get. So therefore, you won't be privy to the fact that you are stuck in this system. At this point within this section, you're probably wondering, okay, what's the point of these gods maintaining us within this reality? And the point is just like any other farm. It's to produce food or a crop of some kind. Now, earlier I mentioned what is called loosh, and I want to define that now before we go further into this theory. Loosh is a metaphysical idea that humans, or any living being for that matter, but mostly particularly humans, produce a type of psychic or energetic force when experiencing a heightened state of emotion. Whether that's fear, love, religious ecstasy, or trauma. The idea of what is called loosh is originally from a man named Robert Monroe. He is the founder of the Monroe Institute, which is tied up to the CIA's Gateway Papers, or the Gateway Documents, which is a insane rabbit hole. It kind of popped off a few years back on the internet, but basically there's these documents that the US government ran a bunch of tests on psychics, meditation, soul, energy, universe, out-of-body experience type thing. Crazy rabbit hole, really complicated. This is where that idea of loosh comes from, is that we produce a kind of outward effect of energy when experiencing a higher state of emotion or thought, if you will. Salvador agreed with this idea of loosh, that there's like this life force or this vital energy that we have in us and that becomes outwardly expressed when experiencing certain things. And he believes that the religions of the world are things put in place so that we have something to follow that produces that product. It's kind of like the gardening is automatic if we follow these religions and these belief systems. At its basic core principle, it's this idea that our reactions to the stimuli given to us produces this cycle of reincarnation and keeps us stuck here, feeding the farm, feeding these creators or like these lesser gods or whatever you want to call them. For example, Salvador believed that wars, terrorism, and other catastrophes are not necessarily made by human error, but are instigated by these quote-unquote lowercase g gods. And it kind of ties into why maybe we see more UFO sightings or more weird phenomena happening around wartime. And he considers these to be harvesting events to produce a larger amount of this loosh. We are currently in one of these harvesting times because we're basically in World War III. So, do with that as you will. Salvador argued that it wasn't necessarily all bad things either, that good things also produce this loosh that these beings feast on. So miracles or love or religious experiences, the religious ecstasy, is also part of this cycle, and that it is put there to give us a something to look forward to chase after, a savior, a union, a moment to pursue. And again, this ties directly, in my opinion, back to capitalism. You have a goal, a quota, a certain status to reach, and if you're always pursuing that, you will always be subjected to those reactions. So whether or not you don't get it and you fail, you're going to be pissed, you're going to be upset, you'll be angry. That is loosh. If you do achieve it and it's awesome and it's fucking great, that's again going to produce loosh. So that there's nothing within the cycle itself that you can do to escape it. Whether you fail or succeed, the emotion that you produce is what they want, the infamous they. Salvador's theories clearly parallel Gnosticism with the idea of us being trapped here by some kind of higher being to be siphoned of our vital energy, our life force, whatever you want to call them. That the idea of love, war, pussy, and fear all conglomerate into this idea that we are being forced to be reincarnated against our will. Now, how do we escape this horrible realm of materialism and suffering? Well, I'm glad you asked. Now, I'm going to get this out of the way right now. Simulation theory doesn't really... If we're in a simulation, we're not escaping the simulation. I mean, like, unless we became, like... I don't know. You can do, like, a whole, like, Terminator thing. We become aware that we're being stuck here and we overload the system and all that. But I don't know if that's even possible. And maybe that's the point of the simulation, to see if we can do it. I don't know. But it doesn't give a clear idea of how to escape the simulation, unless there's some weird matrix shit that I'm not aware of. However, Gnosticism and Salvador do give some hope into how we can escape this forced reincarnation cycle. Gnosticism has this concept of gnosis, which is spiritual or mystical knowledge, and if you cultivate enough of it, you can become aware enough to transcend this cycle of death and rebirth. And Salvador's idea is pretty much the same, in the sense that once you die, you have to be aware enough the fact that you are dead, and you have to turn your back to the light or these illusions and stay lucid during the time of death, basically. Both of these concepts push an idea of detachment and overcoming the illusion via of spiritual enlightenment, basically. And that's great, but it's not as revolutionary as I think some people think it might be, because that concept has been around since the dawn of forever. For example, Hinduism and Buddhism are amongst, if not the oldest practiced religions on the planet, and they both speak of, divine purpose, reincarnation, karma, ascending the cycle of samsara, the whole thing. These religions, I know, the religions of the world, are here to control us and all that. And you can make that argument for sure. But there are certain philosophies that within those practices that kind of negate that. Like, for example, one of the key teachings of Hinduism, God says to abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to God. Some interpret that as to abandon the ritualistic, habitual practices and just find inner peace and to surrender to the Almighty. And it also talks of lesser gods that controls different parts of reality, and that when you die, depending on who you worship, you go to those. And then if you aren't worshiping the God of gods and you're not finding that inner peace within, you get cycled back in. And these are, again, some of the oldest practiced religions ever. And I think I'm not trying to, start any fires, but it's like, it seems that there's this constant struggle to find meaning and purpose in this insane material world that we live in. And again, to cover my tracks, the Gnosticism and even Salvador talk about how these gods of religions are not the real gods, and that there's an almighty that is above all that. And I don't know, one, I find it very interesting that this concept that is so old is being rediscovered by others. But also I see all of it as just an attempt to explain why there's so much suffering and why there's so much pain and so much back and forth between love and hate and happiness and sadness. And at the end of the day, whether or not you believe in an all-powerful being or not, or you believe in schizo level fucking aliens that are controlling the universe, in my opinion, it all boils down to detachment at the end of the day, and finding what that means for you. Because, and like in Buddhism, I'm not trying to sound preachy, but there's a concept that I came across called, actually I don't remember the name, but it's, if you meet the Buddha on your path, you should kill him. And from my understanding, this means that if somebody comes to you with this, like, oh, I figured it out, I know how the Matrix works, I am enlightened, I know how everything is, be leery of that person, because maybe for them it works that way, but for you it doesn't. And I think there is something beautiful about really understanding the older concepts that I've talked about. And I don't want to get like super far into religion and anything, because I do respect if you believe in like Jesus or Allah or whatever you want to believe in. Like, everyone's on their own path to finding peace, and that's all we can really do, is look inward and find how we relate to the divine, whether that's Jesus, whether that's the Buddha, whether that's, alien spaghetti monsters that manipulate our brains, whatever works, whatever. So I guess that's my call to action, is to just think for yourself and believe and love, look inward and detach from the chaos of it all, because at the end of the day, that's all you can do is control your reaction to it, whether it's a simulated stimuli or it's just how the universe works. The only thing you can control is how you respond to it. So I really hope that didn't come off super preachy, or I'm trying to push anyone to believe anything. I don't want that, and I'm really sorry if it did come off that way. There were some pretty heavy topics in there, I think, but I think this was also a pretty good overview of the concepts at play when it comes to prison planet theory. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate I've been getting some nicer comments lately, and I really appreciate those. So leave a like and subscribe and all that, and it's perfect timing because the AC just kicked on. So I'll catch you guys in the next one.